Bailey is the community engagement manager and not necessarily like the chief engineer of the project and
Yes.
whatnot. So a lot of my questions to you are focused on what has been the developer's role in engaging with the community throughout this project, and how did you incorporate, as you heard concerns from the community into either the design, or the power generation, for example, for the center or for the data center, and more questions like that. But if
Mhm.
folks in the chat can also make sure that we're asking community engagement related questions as opposed to a lot of the engineering stuff, because I know you don't have that expertise on hand right now. So with that, Bailey, talk to us about your project with Geronimo Power.
Yeah, thanks for that caveat. I talked to Benya about, I'm a generalist, so I know a little bit about a lot of things across the company, but I don't have deep knowledge on permitting or some of the more technical aspects of development. So if I can't answer certain questions, I'm really not trying to be cagey. I'm just not the SME. But if you have questions that you want to follow up with me on email, happy to chat with you later. Yeah, so as Benya said, I work for Geronimo Power. Have historically been a renewable energy developer. Our company was started about 20 years ago by a guy who grew up on a farm in Mountain Lake, Minnesota, and had gone into finance and worked in finance for quite a while, but had a lot of connections still to his roots in Mountain Lake and would visit the farm. And he and his brother kind of ran the farm operation, and they had been approached by a wind developer who wanted to build a wind project on their land. And they felt that the terms they offered weren't really favorable to farmers and didn't really respect their rural roots. So Noel Ron, the founder, said, we can do this ourselves. And so the first wind project they built was on his land. And the company has grown from there. We do solar development, battery storage, and have recently added data center development to our portfolio as well. So we're fairly new to this space, as a lot of people are. We're developing a data center in Nobles County, Minnesota. So if you know where Worthington is, in this kind of the southwest corner, um, we announced that data center site publicly back in August, and I'm really proud to say that we have not asked anyone to sign, any public officials to sign NDAs. Our CEO, who actually was the first intern at the company and kind of grew up with the company, has from day one said, we're not doing NDAs. That doesn't feel like the right thing to do. That doesn't feel community focused. So we started conversations with commissioners. And, the thing about not having them sign NDAs is they can go and talk to whoever they want in the community. So it does bring an element of kind of compressing the timeline of how quickly you have to go and talk to lots and lots of other community groups. So we kind of kicked off with the commissioners just to kind of give them a heads up one week. And the next week we were going around to lots of community groups, having one-on-one meetings, trying to get connected with as many folks as possible. Our MO through this whole process has been, let's be as transparent as possible. Let's listen and learn from the community what they want. I loved hearing John's presentation. I think my ideal situation is to go into a community where the public officials are really clear about what they want and what they don't want. And that provides a really great basis for negotiation with a community. So I really love that. I think I'll stop there and I can take questions later.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are some questions already, and that maybe I'll float it actually both to you and John with both of your projects of,
Yeah,
energy backup. We've talked earlier about the need for energy to power these data centers. Um,
yeah,
you all are an energy developer as well, so
yeah.
talk a little bit about that, and then John, if you maybe want to speak to your project about any kind of design elements in your project too around energy capacity.
Yeah, that's actually something I should have mentioned. So thanks for that. So we had four existing renewable energy projects in this area already, which is how we chose it for the data center. So we've got a solar project with battery storage. We also have three pretty large wind projects. So with all of that combined generation, it will be enough to power the data center. And all that power will go onto the grid and then go to the data center. So it's not It's not quite a direct, one-to-one transfer, but it will offset all the power of the data center. Another unique thing about Southwest Minnesota, if you drive through that area, you may notice a lot of the wind turbines out there are not spinning a lot of the time. And what's happening is that they're being curtailed. So the grid, there's so much congestion on the grid that the utilities or whoever's in charge says, hey, we need you to turn your turbines off because we can't take that extra capacity. So actually bringing a large load user like a data center will help with some of that curtailment and allow those wind turbines to operate more consistently.
In our project, it was evaluated, and the engineers and developers discussed that they would look at using diesel generators as backups. And we researched this utilization because their comments were the generators operate very infrequently. They run a few minutes, maybe a month for testing purposes. They're very rarely ever on for any extended periods of time. So we wanted to verify that and have with other data center sites of potential similar size and scope in our geographic region. So a few community down in Iowa seems to be a larger collection of them, and they confirm very, very much these same statements that the the generators on average for the year run maybe an hour or two in total per generator.
Yeah, that's consistent with my understanding as well for generator backup.
Okay. And then my last question to you both before going over to Sarah, which is probably a good segue for Kira's work too. John, you talked a lot about community benefit agreements in your example. Bailey, I know one of the examples of a community, what you all have included already in a community benefit agreement is a $4 million trust, or not trust, but charitable fund. Can you talk about the development of that? What is it? What does it go towards? And how did you work with the community to prioritize or design that?
Yeah, for sure. So this is something that we've done since the inception of the company, setting up a charitable fund for every project that goes into operations. So it's something that we talk about in development. Not every project makes it across the finish line, so we don't actually have real pointed conversations with the community about the specifics of the fund until we've gotten to, we're almost in construction. Like we know this project is real. But once we get to that point, we talk to the community and we say, we set up a charitable fund for every project that goes into operations. And we started out with a $200 per megawatt commitment and then upped that to $250 per megawatt a couple of years ago. For the data center, just because of the larger impact to the community, we're actually pledging $500 per megawatt. So that's where that $4 million. So it's $500 per megawatt per year for the first 20 years of operations. So that's something we're actively talking with the community about. Depending on the specifics of the community and the project, sometimes we set this up to go directly to a school district. That's most likely to happen if in the area where we're building, the school district doesn't receive very much tax revenue. So that's not the case in Minnesota. But there are other states where, like, the school district receives tax revenue, but then their portion from the state is cut proportionately. So they don't really see a benefit. So in those states, we set up an education fund that goes directly to the school district. Minnesota, that's not as much the case. Schools do receive the tax benefit, which is great. So we'll likely set up more of a general charitable fund that will go through a foundation and be more of like a grant program that people can apply for grant funding annually.
Gotcha.
And depending on the size of the project and like how many landowners we have and the size of the community, sometimes we set up like an advisory committee in the community that helps distribute the funds. Sometimes if it's a bit smaller project, we just set up an agreement with the charitable fund so that they kind of make some of those decisions. So it's very customized to each community.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming that's on top of tax revenue, right? It's not
Yes, absolutely.
tax.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep. We do. There are places where we do pilot or PILT, depending on the state and the permitting regime. So a payment in lieu of taxes, but I'm not aware that we do that in Minnesota.